Okay, yeah, so they can see.
Provide hybrid because
Oh.
people don't want to go back. They want to be able to hop in and do something from their desk, So
Watch it later.
yeah, yep, exactly. So
Nice, I'll see you.
But here's what we're going to do is, we have a
probably one year, two, and then three. Maybe we're gonna have the first one, machine learning, drive customer experience, and identify customer interest. And that's gonna be a really natural intelligence to do it. That's gonna be the one, the two, and having, again, we probably have some jump from high growth, go that one, or the last, first one, team customers. And they will be given, trial, all of them will be there, myself, so we're still taking, they're gonna be, so one of those, so we have about 5 people doing, if you don't, they have like to talk with you, so. The last part I want to make sure that, Dave probably talked about, Dave was probably wrong. Dave had like sometimes, and then he wasn't there, the problem is that, okay, sorry, yes. Yeah, good question. Okay, good point. Now, those who are popular, please just go to the ones that go to your watching. But if you don't, go to content, and then if you want to watch another, will all be recorded, and you'll be able to get that. We'll tell you how to get that recording, so you'll be able to do that. So please, choose one, and if you don't see your popular answer, that's actually so hard to do. And go and you watch it. Okay, so let's get the thing.
I don't know what you're planning to see, but this one's going to be focused on basically kind of a low code, no code approach, figuring out customer needs. So, don't get it, take it. Now, looking forward to getting that video.
How you doing? Doing some time off?
Yes.
Good for you. You had that bogus or? No. Not a lot of snow up there. I got some this week.
Yeah, okay, all right, you can try it. So you compare yourself to.
I think that's funny. Yeah, there won't be chunks.
Oh, come on, I
You
have.
get my dad.
Okay, yeah. I'm great, I laugh at that, I laugh at all. 15 years.
All right.
Oh, it's a tough word. Oh, yeah.
Nice song.
Yeah.
But no, it was just.
Yeah. That's a little, yeah, that's not ideal. Not ideal.
Yeah, that was a high end.
Very good.
I had a restaurant there.
Yeah.
Shop there, really nice.
Okay.
Yeah. Swanky restaurant for boys.
Yeah, yeah.
The one, so cute. Oh. Wait, at 9 a.m. Yeah. Your problem.
Yep. I recorded it.
As the keynote was over.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so different. Really? Wow.
Probably been about what, 2 years?
Small.
One benefit is that community, even by my Yes. Yes, that's out, yeah. So there's. Yeah, Amity, sometimes. It's all
Yeah. A half hour, maybe a little longer.
I am on, right?
Alan, we good? Yeah.
All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Thane Liffick with Swallow Consulting. I'd like to introduce Anthony Gould, and he's going to talk to us about some pretty interesting topics, and I will let him take it from here.
Thanks, Thane.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining breakout room number 3. I know you have 3 options and you can watch a video, but I'm glad you're here. This is going to be a data-driven talk, as you can see on the screen. Data-driven talk, really understanding our customers and the opportunity in the telco space around rural internet. So I think that there's an interesting question for us all to just kind of ask ourselves at the beginning of this, which is, do we take for granted access to internet? we don't take for granted access to like power utilities, right? Like my toilet works, all that stuff, right? Like that's expected. And there's this basically equity, right? An equitable version of access to internet that is really important today. So I'm going to talk about that. Quickly to step back though and introduce myself, I'm Anthony Gould from Solemn. I'm from the Seattle office, but I went to Northwest Nazarene University, so a bit of a Boise. I took a couple classes here, and it's been really great to be back. I haven't traveled during the last couple of years. We were just talking about that, and it was like, so you're traveling. Like, when did that get going? I'm like, right now, right this minute is the first time that I'm back in person, and that's I love it. I love just being back with you all and having these conversations because it's just a different scenario. And then of course, ITC has done a great job of catering to the virtual audience so that we can come back and watch a lot of these sessions and continue that conversation. So my role at Solemn is Senior Director of Data and Technology. I'm in a global team, but Solemn is a local model first. So Thane, you just met, he's going to come up towards the end, and he leads our Boise office. So we're really excited to share more about our Boise strategy. But Solemn is a modern consulting company that focuses on strategy, analytics, and technology. And so anyway, we're really excited to share our story. A really key piece, actually, sorry, I want to step back and say I've been with Solemn for 8 years, but a kind of a unique part of my journey is I left Solemn in 2020 and joined T-Mobile with an emerging business group focused on high-speed internet. And so this was something that we took, both like from a pilot stage all the way to a national offering. But today is not so much talk about telco or about T-Mobile or telco even specifically. Like, this is public sector. This is the local internet service providers. This is more the story about connectivity in rural America. And what you'll also hear is that there's some urban challenges with this as well. Okay, so kind of setting the stage, 14 million Americans, and this is from the FCC, but 14 million Americans have lack access to internet. This litmus test that FCC has is 25 megabytes per second down and 3 megabytes per second up. I don't know, has anybody run a speed test like the last 3 months? We were talking about this last night. Like, some people are like always doing this, and other people are like, unless you see the spinny circle with Netflix, you don't really care, right? You probably make a phone call. 25 megabytes per second down and 3 up is actually, you're not doing multiple devices, working remotely. You can have an okay Netflix experience for sure, but this is a pretty low bar, and there's still 14 million Americans. So the FCC says high-speed internet in this digital opportunity brings increasingly essential to innovation, economic opportunity, healthcare, and civic engagement. Over the last couple of years, we've seen many jobs, schools, healthcare services, all shifting to this virtual environment. So this issue of broadband is more relevant than ever. The FCC is, and the federal government, fortunately, are doing some really good things. There's $65 billion that have come from the infrastructure bill that are pouring into local municipalities. So I've talked with, state of Texas. We've also talked with some of the LA counties, like Los Angeles County, San Bernardino County, and these municipalities are all trying to address, how do I take care of my municipality? And what you'll hear in the coming slides is a data-driven understanding of what the opportunity in the market is, as well as where that gap is really core to this entire thing. Okay, so as we talk about the overarching principle, right? So from a ISP, an internet service provider, I don't know how many in this room would be brave enough to say, I love my ISP today, but it's not a typical scenario, right? It is kind of that utility. It's something that I do with, but it's not like a relationship I have. And that's something that can be bridged, right? There is an opportunity to understand customers, understand the usage in the home, and make sure that we can set a better expectation on the way in, as well as kind of start looking at some of these predictive variables of when their internet's going to go bad, or when it's going to be unreliable, and to do some of that outreach. So that's an overarching principle. And what you see here on the three panels is, number one is really wanting to maximize the use of the existing network. So that's, there's no more capital expense, right, for investing in what you have today. There's a quote, one of the partners I work with in this space says, the majority of your network traffic occurs on the minority of the network. And that really points to the density of our urban areas. And as you go out to suburban, near rural, you start having less and less of that access. So we want to make sure that we can maximize like those areas that are kind of under tapped, right? We talked about it, unused capacity. And then for the areas that are already completely tapped, right, from a capacity standpoint, we want to make sure that we don't overload a customer or add a customer to that sector, that cell site, and just have a really poor experience, right? And that's really what I've seen in the marketplace is that we'll have these coverage maps, these beautiful coverage maps. I feel like 50 of them during the Super Bowl ads. I don't know about you all. T-Mobile was in there, by the way. They had the Scrubs actors, JD and what's his name, Turk. I don't know if you remember those actors for the TV show Scrubs, but they did have a highlight there. And the point is coverage is good, but understanding where capacity is, where you can load another customer, is actually really core to this. So that leads right into providing the customers that transparent experience. There are more and more of these offers that are being transparent with the price point, no contracts, and here's the expectation from speeds, and being willing to have that conversation as you go along. And I'm hoping we're moving away from, every 12 months, every 9 months, having to call back and say, hey, lower my promotional rate. Because that has been, personally my experience. And then third is really understanding the compelling internet options or offers that we can bring to the specific markets. And I'm going to go to the next slide because what this hinges on is actually understanding internet at a household level. So what you see here is zooming into a kind of a residential area. Actually, this isn't all that residential. It's outside Seattle. It's kind of mountainous, and there's a few towers that connect here. And understanding where you have good network and not good network is key. And this is all kind of randomized from the green shading here, but you'll see kind of more of a real life scenario here in one of the products that we built. And it's not everywhere. So you may be saying yes to one part of a subdivision or one part of the town, and you might be saying no to another section. The reason for that is fixed broadband, just to kind of orient around the technology, is something you connect directly to a power outlet, and a hotspot, right, could be battery charged. What that's doing is just like our cell phones is connecting to that nearest tower, and it's using that capacity, right? The same as you would on your cell phone. So it differs from cable, which is like your copper, or to the household, or fiber, right? So those of us that are fortunate enough, right, to have a fiber offering either coming or currently there, it's a completely different story. My subdivision, I do feel fortunate with this. I personally made this transition just recently, was having a lot of video issues streaming and trying to work from home, and we had a local fiber company come in with some old Frontier Spectrum, and I now have 900 down, 900 up. I don't need that, right? Like, I'm not a gamer. I don't need that kind of speed, but I'm not having any problems anymore from home. So, having a highly predictive understanding of what the experience is going to be in the home and the competitive nature of what's in that market. So if there is fiber or cable to the home, then that's not your persona, right, for a fixed broadband offering, because you're probably not going to be too differentiated from a price point. It also starts changing your actions from a marketing standpoint, because you're not going to market to the entire town or the entire city. You're going to market to those 9 houses and not that 10th. And that's actually how this is starting to pivot. But that then starts pointing to the MarTech stack, right? The marketing technology, and do we even have the ability to be that hyper local in our messaging and our offers? The final point on here is, once we have this understanding down to a household level, the key decisions really happen in a more aggregate view of that, right? So we understand the total opportunity maybe across our coverage area. We understand that opportunity today. We understand that opportunity tomorrow. And that takes me into 3 key terms that I think are just that I've largely covered, but I want all of you to kind of catch here. Eligibility is where the coverage is today and what products are offered there. So like I mentioned, fixed broadband, copper, cable, or fiber. And that's your eligibility. But don't stop there, right? Supportability is the capacity. So if I have a pie, right, and we have 50 customers on there, and I load the 51st, and now everybody's sharing too small of a piece of pie, you're getting that spinning circle, right? And most of the time, that's when your internet service provider is failing you. So trying to make sure that you're operating in supportable areas is absolutely critical. And then finally, addressability. This is the market share that I can address today, but also an understanding of, as I optimize the network, as I continue building out, and it's not me, I'm not a network engineer, but as we optimize the network and go build that out, what's our opportunity 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as our products and services continue to evolve. I don't know if the data kind of like just comes off from a data analytics person. But the really core of this from a data layer standpoint is what you see in the 6 dimensions here. And this is that data-driven persona that we're gonna carry in, and I'm gonna walk you into a demo here in just a minute. So this methodology though uses these 6 dimensions there at the top left. It's our broadband analysis, understanding the network characteristics by a geographic area. Their top right is the density of that market. So it could be, again, dense as in urban or not dense as in rural. That does factor into, again, what products you're offering, but also the capital expense that it will take to eventually build out to cover some of these more less dense areas, more rural areas. Socioeconomics is a pretty key factor. Most of the federal dollars that have been put out there have been around rural internet, which is amazing, right? I think that's been fantastic. The FCC has shown that divide is rapidly closing. But what we're also seeing is that for lower income urban areas, there are not some affordable options, right? So we still lack that good access in some counties, like I was mentioning, like Los Angeles, right? That are looking to actually subsidize specific areas of Los Angeles. So the socioeconomics really plays into what offering is most appropriate for this geographic area. Competition, we kind of talked about already, right? It's, don't need to offer something that there's something better there already today. By the way, the FCC publishes this data because internet service providers are required to state how they're using their spectrum, and it's all self-reported. And so one of the challenges here is that it's not very accurate. It's just, it's more sample size, right? So it's not as transparent and accurate as what you'd want. So understanding the competitive offerings is really key. Talked about the current and planned network, understanding what our opportunity is today, tomorrow, and finally device, right? Different devices can range a wide degree of spectrum. I don't know if anybody has upgraded recently to like Wi-Fi 6 mesh in their house or anything like that. There's new technologies out there, right? That's going to perform differently on this network than something that's been in your house for 10 years. And it's also going to perform differently than if you put it behind a screen, like a TV screen, right? Like we're talking about physics here, right? Radio frequency coming into the house and propagating the house. The hex bin, you've probably seen this theme already. So just to touch on that really quick, in a geospatial analytics standpoint, a very traditional way of visualizing these metrics is aggregating in hex bin across the earth. You can do that in squares. We might call you a flat earther, right? But the hex bin is just simply that, right? It's an aggregation so that we can make a decision about the households that live there. There's different zoom levels, so you can zoom in and get really precise, but at some point you're just down to a couple of houses. So choosing the right aggregation level, just like any analytics effort, is really what we're after. Yes, Alex.
So Ookla's data is all based on grid, right? Like, so it's flat earth, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you see the speed test providers move into like the hex model at all?
There are benefits, like from a geospatial analytics standpoint, like a hex bin, there's an equivalent distance between hex bins, right? Centroids of hex bins, where in a grid system, not all those squares are going to be an equal distance away, right? Those ones that are at the corners. So it really depends on the type of analysis you're doing. Some of our clients I work with, they're using a grid system, and like while I was laughing about it, it's completely appropriate, right? Like just aggregate the metrics so that you can make these decisions would be the point. There's a great article out on CartoDB is a product out there, and they have an article about the difference between like a hex bin approach versus, they call it a quad key approach. So if you do want to read about that, that would be where I direct you. Ookla, Microsoft has some public data in this. The demo I'm going to show here in just a couple slides is actually all public data. Both the premise household data as well as the speed tests are actually coming from the Ookla and Microsoft public data sets. Feel free to ask questions. I will have some questions at the end here. Okay, so I want to talk about taking products to market. And there's, obviously a lot of variables, right? Is like, how do you go solve this? So a few products that I want to mention that are pretty common in these strategies. Number one here on the left-hand side of the screen is the geospatial analytics platform. So how do I see that, right? And go really interrogate that data. The second piece, it's just classic, right? Is like, well, how do I make sure that this customer knows how to get in, request service, see if they're eligible? So I'll show you an example of that. The mobile app within the home, Solom's built these apps before, and this is the actual primary touch point with the customer. And so I don't have a lot of time to go into this one today, but taking these personas that we start with to understand kind of the predictive, like almost propensity to buy is what we're getting to in the kind of the initial period here of that analysis. We can follow that through and look at their speed test. We can look at how that is performing within their home. And we can take those personas and start using that persona in kind of different tracks within the mobile app. So maybe just a bit of description, because I don't know if that was clear. Some of us are like technologists and we want to like troubleshoot, like just give me the instructions, give me the manual, I'm gonna go for it. And other folks are like, I just want it to work. Maybe I'll just send me to a care rep. And so we want to address those personas as we identify them early in this process and carry that all the way through. So while I'm not presenting that today, the key piece that I want to share here is this is all built on a scaled architecture, whether that be cloud or your kind of on-prem scenarios. We do a lot of cloud work, so the software and data engineering all being on these cloud services. And what you see on the screen is also they're not a set of point solutions. Right? There's integrations that take the data from the beginning of the process all the way through. I think you have to push play on this one. Okay, so the initial screen here is welcoming the user, right? And this is an internal user that's inspecting their analysis of the opportunity. So you can see the top opportunities by city. We can see some of the incoming data. We can see churn. We can see subscriber growth, things like that. But at the heart of this solution and what I've been talking about so far are these hex bins, right? And the dark green in this case are these areas that we think we have a very compelling offering. The broadband service as well as capacity is going to bring that good experience within the home. And here on the left-hand side of the screen, right, we can start seeing, and I don't know if you can see it from the background, but I'm going to put speed on, which is the Ookla data source, by the way. We can turn the sectors on, which are those cell towers. And then I can also turn the fiber layer. And so that's that line, the purple line that you see that is not a road. And so now that I turn the premise on, and again, from a lot of that Microsoft open source data, we can actually see the premises of the house. What's kind of cool about a platform like this is being able to swap out the underlying base map layers, just like you would on an app like Strava or something like that. Sometimes it's really important, right? If you're running in a forest, that street map is of no use to you, right? But if you can see a trail, a hybrid map, that's really key. So I turned on a satellite street map here, and you can kind of start seeing how those yellow locations map up with actual house location. For us, this ended up being really important on multiple efforts, whether those be public sector or these big telcos, is understanding where we thought they wanted service, where the customer was, and where they're actually requesting service. Sometimes that was a vacation home. Sometimes that was the kid's college location. And so we needed on the incoming way to be able to validate that we were giving them a good eligibility, thumbs up or thumbs down based on the location they wanted that service. So let's shift here. You see I'm going to add a data source. I'm going to look for this metric called APS, which is Area Priority Score. This is simply an index score, 1 to 10, of where 10 being we think we can really compete there. That's a fantastic offering. So 7 through 10 is where you're going to see a lot of these really good offerings. So you can see the slide. Now we have only hex bins in that 7 to 10 range. I'm going to turn off the satellite image so you can really see the green pop and we can understand where we have opportunity. And the second thing I want to do is start narrowing down these households. I'm at 42,000 right now that have this score of 7 or higher. But right now I want to start finding that intersection of what product should I offer. So I'm going to look at fiber. And now I only, as soon as I click this, I think it's coming up here. What we'll see is only the hex bins with fiber are going to be, they'll be filtered. And so now if I was in completely the fiber business, I have a subset of customers, almost 17,000, that I could think about starting to insert into like a cohort set of invites going through the marketing channels. But if I'm in a fixed broadband setting, I want to turn that fixed broadband, that fiber, that Boolean from true to false. So now we can look at just the hex bins where we don't have fiber. So the idea, and I'm going to skip forward, but the idea is that we would then take that data set and we would move that over into the marketing channel and then sales and then care, and we would have a good understanding of why this customer was brought into this service. What you see here on the screen is that customer experience saying, hey, I love service. Let me show you my location, and then get a response. So this is just going to loop real quick here. But again, the point being is like not a bunch of point solutions along the way, but really an integrated experience of capturing the right information, comparing that address to the address we thought they were at, and making sure we update our customer profile as needed. Another thing that's just completely behind the scenes, I love Uber as another example, or Lyft as an example of a geospatial data service that we don't even think about data, right? It's my rider profile, it's driver profiles, it's time, right? It's routes, it's all of these things that are data, but for us, it's just part of our life, right? We just understand that that's going to serve us well. So in the back end of this application, it's writing to our database, kind of bidirectional, and saying, hey, this new location just came in for that customer. Is it what I expected, or is it too far away? Should we do further inspection, or can I say yes or no right now? Right? That's what we were doing in a millisecond response for the customer. That's technology. That's right. Right? It's great. Just like that Uber experience, it just works as you would expect. So moving to this slide, I talked about some of the alignment and the tensions that can exist across your channels that are represented in this conference, your product, right, your UI, your engineering team, as well as your executives, kind of the finance side of the house. Network, they want to make sure that they're protected, right? You're not overusing that network. You heard about the story of marketing, right? They're going to collect this data, and they can start looking at things like density and the score that I showed you, that APS score, and start tying that into take rates and churn rates, and start doing their more test and learn strategies. So we start looking at product, emerging product, thinking of like the product of fixed broadband, but now that we have that, what about TV offerings? What about IoT offerings, right? What about other connected services within the home that we can say, there's a whole lot of capacity, and that's a great home for them to continue building out on this suite of products. So it can lead to that overall idea of that next best action or recommended product. One of my challenges today, and this inspired me, so I hope it lands with you. Mark Randolph, co-founder and the first CEO of Netflix, I heard him on a podcast and he said, I don't believe in good ideas. And I'm thinking, okay, say more, right? I don't believe in good ideas. I believe in testing lots of bad ideas. He says, I've realized that the key to being successful is not how good your ideas are, it's how good you are at being able to find quick, cheap, and easy ways to try your ideas. And that's really important, right? Because we all have product, like charters, like and ways of getting things done, kind of like this slide. This is one of Salim's approaches, our learn, ideate, and plan. Nothing wrong with this slide, but what we are all faced with in developing products is a set of dimensions that exist internally to us. The skills on my team, the availability of those skills, are they completely tapped right now? What's the budget, right? Most of us don't have an unlimited budget. The time to market, maybe that's flexible or maybe it's not, right? Maybe getting a product to market and being able to test that, even if it's an internal tool, to really get people excited about investing further is really key. The completeness and flexibility of that app, just how robust do we need it to be in the MVP stage or its future state? And what you're led to, and I hope that we all do, is an assessment on every one of our projects that says, where do we map up on this, and how does that lead us to making decisions about how we align this project and really weigh those options and move forward. So that's where I want to actually introduce a bit of a topic that maybe you weren't expecting today, but is this topic of low-code software. In the data and analytics space, this has existed for a while, right? Which is UI-driven tools like a Tableau or Power BI. If you're familiar with like an ETL tool like Alteryx, it's actually a fantastic geospatial tool as well. But on the software engineering or software automation side, these low-code platforms are continuing to gain in relevance. And it's because there's so many applications that are being built out there. So it's not only a scarcity of software engineers in the marketplace, but it's that the number of apps are really increasing. The speed to market, our kind of patience level and the budget level to be able to get to V1 and just solve the problem is, and I don't want to say we're impatient, but there's a lot of things that our business is continuing to evolve, and maybe that tool doesn't need to live on for 5 years, right? Maybe we're looking for a solution that can get us through this next stage of the business, 6 months, 8 months, and then we're moving on to evolving that tool set. And I can tell you more times than one, I've run into that where we're building the thing and it's taken, 6 months to build it, lots of money invested, but I know it's only going to last from a business model standpoint for the next 4 months. And I think that there's a better way, right? That's where I've seen a lot of value from these low-code platforms. So there's some low-code providers out there or platforms. This one is OutSystems. By the way, Salim, we're not a reseller. I'm just providing you like the things that have worked for me. So this isn't like a license or any kind of that conversation. But there's Salesforce, Microsoft are also, of course, big players, and they have their own version of their low-code platforms. Microsoft's Power Platform, of course. And then there's in the Gartner quadrant, you'll see Pega and Mindex as another couple options there. But what I want you to see from the OutSystems UI is it's drag and drop, much like you would see in some of the other BI type tools. And so you have this visual development environment. Largely, you still have an environment where you can custom code, right? You can write the code that you need, but you're not needing to memorize quite as much syntax. And the big thing is the time to value, right? Time to being able to produce this product and experiment. So that's a really key thing, right? That ties back to that Mark Randolph story, is the ability to experiment and see if that resonates. Bringing this slide back up for just a moment. This slide, this graphic, we built on at the end of our, what we would call our initial phase or our discovery phase of a project. And we had a really good idea of what the client needed, but we were still sitting there with a lot of wireframes. This was over the holidays, and we produced this demo that you saw today in 4 days in that OutSystems environment. So we were really able to accelerate the kind of the feel of what that tool could be, and it incorporated a lot of the buy-in that you see on the right-hand side of that screen from these different stakeholders.
Anthony.
Yes.
Time. 5 minutes.
Time. Okay. Pretty good, because I'm like wrapping up here. So this slide, I do suggest a strategy of low code and custom code. Definitely not saying that low code is going to be a solution to all. So I'm not going to probably present all 4 of these, but really think about if you have a lot of external customers and this thing needs to exist in a long time and highly customized application, custom code is still a great way to go. My solemn friends that do this for a living will thank me for saying this on stage. But there on the right is the fact that low code is going to continue to increase, right? It's a proportion of the number of applications that are being put into the wild. And so having a blended version of that strategy is key. Okay, so this is my last slide. And then Thane, I'm going to give it to you with maybe a few questions. So that organizational alignment, talk about objectives and key results if you've followed kind of setting goals that way. But you see that there's some of these tensions internally, potentially because, well, I didn't say this before, but you're saying no potentially more times than you're saying yes when you have a methodology like this for customers, right? If it's that 10th house, that door-to-door person is saying, why can't I sell to the end of the street when I could sell and I had fine speed at the beginning? So there's going to be tensions with any methodology. And I'd say start with those key results, those objectives, make sure that you all agree on that methodology. And when things get tough, have that conversation and test and learn, right? That's that third one. So test, learn, have that culture of experimentation. And finally, continue to evolve and understand what the opportunity is to do it differently and introduce low-code software or maybe a slightly different way of doing something to bring a product to market faster. And with that, let's open up for questions. And then, like I said, I think Thane just has maybe some closing words, but that'll be really quick. Thanks for your time. Yeah.
I have a question concerning low-code. Do you almost recommend it more for user interfaces because the commonality of user interfaces between people?
Yeah, that's it's one of their value props, right? Is that you can use the same look and feel. So I know some of these companies that have like 60 to 100 of these apps out there. They're reusing that look and feel, and some of them are kind of mission critical systems like timekeeping across all vendors, all internal FTEs. And one of their key stories that I've heard is that their legacy system like crashed really in an opportune time, and they were able to stand up this application. Kind of overnight. Like I'm not trying to oversell it, right? But it just made that very fast. But it looked and felt the same way from a brand standpoint. So reusable components is certainly valuable. And you could do that with custom code too, right? A lot of these libraries, you're grabbing custom code by their libraries. So it depends on the maturity of your organization and how kind of robust that acceleration path is through a custom code path. And that's the conversation to have. Right? Is what's the time, budget, skill set, to maintain a low code solution. A lot of that's done in the platform, CI/CD pipeline, like deploying your app. That's handled by the application layer. Deploying it is handled there. So it just really depends if you have the talent and skill set available as well as obviously on your team. Yeah.
During the transition to more people working remote during this pandemic, did you have to adapt anything just did you see any usage changes and things like that?
Completely. Yeah, I remember on one of these projects being on this project during this shift of remote working, and the data sets that we had from network engineering, right, like understanding where people were using internet, we knew was kind of like completely like get ready to throw that out the window, and we're basically waiting for enough history in our data set to feel confident about revising that model. One of the things I didn't touch on is that you're going to invite single households potentially because your capacity there says you have 5 seats left, right? And once you sell those 5 seats out, you've now divided that pie up too many times. So we were always and are always evolving this strategy and saying that sector is on, we can invite people, or we need to drop it off. And yeah, that transition period was a big challenge. It felt like we were flying in the dark for a bit. Yeah, Alex.
Can you just tell me what your customer profile was or is for that product, just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
Is it telcos?
So it's telcos, but local ISP providers. There's a great story out of, anybody know the San Juan Islands in Washington? So yeah, I don't get to frequent there all the time, but this is an amazing story. It's a great place as well. And there's a company called Rock Island because they're like literally rock. But the residents didn't have a good access to internet, right? The big telcos weren't reinvesting in the infrastructure. They certainly weren't bringing fiber, but it was just aggravating to many of the citizens. So what generally can happen is you have more of a partnership or cooperative that can agree to these types of strategies. So you'll have maybe a local internet service provider, which is, I mentioned the partner that I've worked with really closely in the past. And he was really instrumental to this strategy, standing up and winning some spectrum there to be able to operate, and then partnering with a new telco to be able to do the build, and then working across the local community, including the power and utility company. Through that relationship, they were able to reduce the risk of investing in like the capital expenditure. And fixed broadband, by the way, is a fantastic like early operating income opportunity. So meaning you can ship these devices out, plug it into the wall, right? You're not waiting on like heavy build to be able to serve a good portion of that. So your kind of balanced strategy in that cooperative situation is, how do I increase operating income quickly through offerings that are available today? And where can I then invest the best way so that as the network build happens, right, then I can really do that. Part of that strategy, I know we're at time, is trying to figure out how do we share that expense, right, so that we can reduce the risk. And so those homes, those neighborhoods, we're actually sharing a bit of that cost. So it was down to like an HOA level where they pay for that last mile fiber to connect their set of homes. And I think that's a fascinating model. I don't know if I can provide some links after, but look up Orcas Power and Light Company in Rock Island, and you'll probably find that case study. Should I bring up Thane?
All right, let's do it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. And just to summarize what I found so amazing when I heard the story, I mean, just think about that. All that data, I believe, was publicly available. Built that visualization that you saw in 4 days to get a micro segment of your customers, and then be able to figure out what those customers, right? The marketing department, the sales department's figuring out what kind of an offering are we going to send out to them. And just amazing to see all these things come together and the transformative nature of all this technology, right? I think you'd set an example a year ago, 2 years ago, this type of project would have taken 6 months, right? Doing a lot of custom heavy development. So again, some key takeaways, especially on the low code, no code, it's here, it's today, and it's something that can really save a lot of us and our technologists time to get things out to market and experiment. So I'm not sure, is this the thing that's...
I would just do it with the keyboard.
All right. Just to wrap things up, who are we? Slalom Consulting, our goal is to have 100 local consultants in the Boise area supporting our private and public sector enterprises. What we do, you saw a really great example where we bring in strategy, technology, and transformation. So we do the whole gamut of things, and we're really looking forward to continue to expand our footprint in Boise. So with that, if you do have any other questions for Anthony or myself, find us after this presentation. And again, let's give Anthony a big round of applause.
Oh, we go back. Yeah. Right. What surgery? We should read the same. You well, he released me and he said, you were 22, you didn't do it. I said, what about you? You know, the men, you're all about it. Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, when I was there.
So you hired you.
Yeah. Oh, hi. Nice to meet you.
Hello, how are you guys?
How are you doing? Thanks. Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah. Have future conversations. Good. A lot of, I think, like what you have.
Not sure even. Somebody, I see it.
Well, thanks for saying hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's good.
How are you?
Is, waiting the world is,